everyone, and welcome to another Heart for PCOS interview. Today, I have the immense honor of interviewing a very special guest for our Heart for PCOS interview series. JJ Virgin is a triple board certified nutrition expert and fitness Hall of Famer and passionate advocate of eating and exercising smarter. JJ is a prominent TV and media personality whose previous features include co-host of TLC's Freaky Eaters, 2 years as the online camera nutritionist for weight loss challenges on Dr. Phil, and numerous appearances on PBS, Dr. Oz, Rachael Ray, Access Hollywood, and The Today Show. JJ is the author of 4 New York Times bestsellers. JJ hosts the popular Ask the Health Expert podcast with over 14 million downloads and growing. She regularly writes for Medium, Mind, Body, Green, and other major blogs and magazines. Welcome, JJ. Thank you for taking the time to sit down and talk with me today.
Well, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm so excited to be able to share your expertise today because lifestyle, including nutrition and exercise, are at the core of care and healing with PCOS. However, trying to understand different diets, what we can eat, how we should eat, and how food impacts our health eludes a lot of us. So I wanted to start off talking about the role of nutrition in health and prevention. Can food actually be a natural way to heal our bodies, and why?
Well, heck yeah, but you knew I was going to say that because food and exercise and sleep and stress reduction are my hammers, right? So, but I think that when you're really looking at what you need to do, whether it's heart disease or insulin resistance, you got to always start food first. And really, when you think about it, you want to start using all these natural lifestyle things first to see how much of your body you can self-correct before you need to use other things. And it's amazing how much change you can make just with diet alone. And the big challenge I see out here nowadays, Ashley, is that so many people think they're eating healthy and they don't realize there's so many poser health foods out there. Like you go to Whole Foods, you think you're doing a great thing just being in that store. And yet there's canola oil, there's apple juice concentrate, agave syrup, all sorts of stuff in there. I mean, I could do a total junk food diet in Whole Foods. Like, what's up with that? And then someone thinks they're doing a great thing. So I think the big challenge we have right now is that we have gotten really far away from what healthy food really is.
Right. So we have to get back to the basics. And what are some of those basics? Or when we're going to a store like Whole Foods, what should we be looking for as far as the foods or the labels?
Yeah, so much has changed over the last, it started in the 1950s when we started the whole industrial seed oil stuff and margarine and canola oil and mazola and all that stuff started coming out. But then you look over the last couple decades and it really started hitting in the 90s when all the fat-free stuff came out and it's just gotten worse. I just heard an interview on 60 Minutes where the doctor said 50 to 85% of obesity is genetics. And I'm like, but in the 1900s, 0.5% of the population was obese. So how could that be genetics?
Yeah.
Could it be that these foods are triggering your epigenetics, causing shifts? Yeah. And so, the first step is to navigate the grocery store. And, the great news is nowadays there's some really amazing healthy foods, but if you don't know what you're looking for, you wouldn't know how to discern them from the others because there's great marketing around all these foods as well. So the obvious first step is the one you always hear, like, don't go in the inside of the supermarket, that's where the danger lurks. But if you think of it, of how you would build your plate, you can build your shopping experience the same way. And I always teach people to build your plate protein first, because when you build protein first, you start first with the most thermic of the 3 macronutrients, the protein, fat, and carbs. 20 to 30% more calories are used in assimilating protein onto your body to rebuild than carbs and fat are. So that's significant when 10 to 15% of your metabolism is determined by your digestion. Here's one thing you can do to kind of push it right there, right? But the other cool thing about protein is it's way more satiating and you get good blood sugar balance. So if you start your plate, build that plate first, and it's not a percentage deal. This is not the zone diet. It's really how much protein do I need? And I would argue that the RDA is a joke, that it actually was built back during World War II so that we could, survive the rationing back then and what was the minimum amount we'd need to survive. And I'm not really interested in just surviving. I don't think you are either. You wouldn't be doing this show. So I'm assuming everybody listening is feeling the same way. So I actually double the RDA and I say it's 0.8 grams per pound of body weight. And so if you take that, and that would be ideal body weight, right? Okay. Ideal body weight, important distinction. And then you divide that between your meals, starting with making sure that your first meal of the day that sets the metabolic tone for the day is your biggie that has at least 30 grams of protein. So if you're in the store, what does that look like? That would be things like the wild seafood, especially things like wild salmon, wild halibut, would be grass-fed and finished meats, pastured poultry. If you can tolerate eggs, it would be pasture eggs. So those are the things I look at first. I'm not talking specifically about any plant-based proteins, because when you do a plant-based protein, you are going to get either a lot of carbs or a lot of fat. So they can't, to me, I put them in the slow, low carb category or the fat category, not the protein category, because you'll get a little bit of protein, a lot of those other things. And I don't know how to have someone do a totally vegan diet without protein supplementation. Yeah. Or they're going to go overboard on one of those things, right? Can't have a low diet. And so that's where I start. I do use a bone broth-based protein powder too, and some collagen. And then the next thing you'd want to look at in the grocery store is non-starchy veggies.
Okay.
Loads of those. And, that whole eat by the rainbow thing is there because the rainbow of these vegetables are the polyphenols in them, and the polyphenols in them feed your gut microbiome. And when you give your gut microbiome what it needs, if you have a microbiome that's eating the standard American diet and getting these highly processed, dirty, I call them dirty processed foods, low fiber, dirty processed, really inflammatory, you're disrupting your gut microbiome, and you actually can change your gut microbiome so it's more glucose intolerant, and that it actually extracts more calories from the food you eat and store it as fat. So you could be sitting next to someone else eating the exact same food, but if your gut microbiome is all messed up, you might be pulling in more calories than them and storing them as fat. Like, that is so ridiculously unfair, right?
It is unfair, but it's so important because a lot of people that have PCOS also have leaky gut syndrome. So it's important to talk about that because people don't really think about digestion as far as chronic conditions like PCOS. So we have to, I guess, listen to what goes into our bodies and how our bodies react to that, correct?
We definitely need to listen to what's going on with our body. And that was when I wrote The Virgin Diet, it was all about connecting the dots between what you're eating and how you feel, which shouldn't be an obscure concept. Back then when I wrote it, I remember sitting with the editors going, it's not an allergy. And they're like, what is it? It's an allergy. It's not an allergy. I can't tell you how many interviews I did where I was like, it's not an allergy. It's an intolerance due to leaky gut. Leaky gut. And so I'm glad leaky gut now is in the vernacular. And it's interesting because people go, well, how many people do you think are affected by food intolerance? I'm like, pretty much everybody. I mean, unless you're actively working against it, your gut's going to become leakier because of stress. So unless you've got active stress modification routines in your life, teaching you not how to get rid of stress, because that's ridiculous. What are you going to do? Tell your husband to take a hike, tell your kids, see you later. I'm just going to be here with my dog. Catch you later. Just keep sending money. We'll be fine. So we're going to have stress in our life, right? So it's really this last couple of years, I did a big double down on Dr. Joe Dispenza's work and really improve my stress tolerance, because I think that's what it's about. It's when you look at anything that we have, our body is meant to be under stress and recover and get stronger. And so, that's how we learn how to handle whether it's physical or mental stress. That's what going to the gym does. So super important there. But stress, especially this stress you're not handling well, will make your gut leakier. So will gluten. So will fructose. So if you think, oh, I'm doing really well with sugar, I'm having that apple juice concentrate as a sweetener, you just hammered your gut because it's mainly fructose. And then so will things like pain medications. So leaky gut, like it's so common now, sadly. And then, of course, a lot of our dirty processed foods disrupt your gut microbiome as well. So there's that piece of it. So you look at leaky gut and you go, all right, now I've launched an inflammatory response. And boy, you kind of look at that wheel of inflammatory response, insulin resistance, right? And
Yeah.
you can see that this is really a key component of healing your bodies for PCS, is really getting into healing leaky gut. And it really starts with swapping out those foods, gluten, dairy, corn, soy, eggs, peanuts, sugar, artificial sweeteners, and putting in healing foods like those proteins, especially fish proteins, like non-starchy vegetables that will put those polyphenols in your microbiome to help it, like the anti-inflammatory fats and oils, things like extra virgin olive oil, right? And wild fish, and some nuts and seeds that have been slow roasted, dehydrated, and soaked. And then doing slow, low carbs, but ones that have a lot of fiber in place.
Yeah.
So that you've got, I say fat, fiber, protein, because those three together, when you protein and fiber, they slow down stomach empty and keep ghrelin suppressed. And they give you better blood sugar balance, so you won't have the spikes. And then fat, of course, also will trigger some neuropeptides, tell your brain you feel full. So it's like that little trifecta of satiety. And I really don't know how to help someone follow a program if they're hungry.
Yeah, no, that's almost impossible. You need something that's sustainable,
Right.
and that's going to, like you say, make you feel satiated. So talking a little bit more about insulin sensitivity and insulin resistance, many living with PCOS, in fact, up to 80% live with insulin sensitivity and insulin resistance. I know in your research and practice, you talk about finding your food and carb intolerances, which you talked a little bit about, and working out less to create a healthy lifestyle. I would love you to share some more insight on why this is important and how it can help someone achieve their goals.
When I look at what you could do, because I always want to make this as simple as possible. I'm not going to say it is easy, but I'm going to say it's simple. And what I realized, Ashley, is that there's three things that if we track and improve these, all the rest of the stuff gets better. Like you pretty much solve everything.
Mm-hmm.
So it's glucose. So what I like to do is a continuous glucose monitor, because then you have in real time, I'm wearing one right now, you have in real time, what the heck just happened? Like I joke because I was on a speaking engagement in the Maldives. Someone invited me last year. They go, "Hey, do you want to speak in the Maldives?" And I'm like, "Yes, I do." Yes, I do. And I don't eat a lot of fruit. I eat some blueberries and a little bit of green banana for my resistant starch. But other than that, that's, it's like 1 to 2 pieces a day max, some days none. And I'm on this buffet and they have, like, I see it in the distance, this beautiful kiwi that's peeled. So none of that brown fuzzy stuff. And I'm like, ooh, and I get a big bowl of this. And oh my gosh, should I jam my blood sugar? It was like, boom, and sat there hovering. And I'm like, uh-oh, I better go out for a brisk walk and do some push-ups and bring this sucker back down again. So, I love a CGM because it will show you, hey, I ate late last night. I've got a higher fasting blood sugar. Hey, I pushed my carbs too much at that meal. I didn't get the protein and fat. So you can see everything and what's going on and, how stress impacts your blood sugar. So that's the first one. The second one is tracking your sleep, because as you know, one poor night of sleep and you're going to be more insulin resistant the next day. One night of sleep. I mean, if you look at it, like if I was starting to work with someone, and I've actually had this because for some reason I had a bunch of rock stars and early morning anchors and then Broadway performers. And it's really, really difficult to do that. You have to adjust their entire schedule and fake their circadian rhythm to make it like it's normal to either go to bed at 4 or get up at 4. So, one poor night of sleep messes you up. Chronic sleep, short sleeping, just realizing you're going to sleep when you're dead. I'm like, well, you can do that. You'll die a lot sooner, so you'll be fine. It's not going to work for you. So prioritizing sleep and tracking sleep. I've got an Oura ring on. I track both with an Oura and an Apple Watch. And I always say I pick which is better, but the reality is the Oura ring's the more effective. So getting your sleep really dialed, because that is actually going to change your eating habits. You have to stop eating 3 to 4 hours before bed. If you eat before bed, melatonins come up to tell your body, let's go to sleep. So your pancreas has decided to take a rest. So now you ate, and you probably didn't eat broccoli and salmon.
Yeah,
Probably.
probably.
I'm just guessing at 10 o'clock at night, you didn't do that. And now you've got lower insulin because your pancreas is resting. It's not pumping things out. And you got some carbs sitting around there. So now your blood sugar is going to be up, messes up your sleep. You'll have that middle of the night crash. You'll wake up in the morning with higher fasting glucose. Messy. The third one is to track your muscle mass. So I know there's a lot of hoopla about scales. Like, I saw a thing where people had a card they could take to the doctor that says, don't weigh me, you'll trigger me. However, I think that we've got to reframe scales totally different than what we're using them for. If you're just looking at weight, this is a really stupid number to look at. We've got to look at what that weight's made up of. No one would go to the doctor and say, you know what, don't do my blood pressure, it triggers me. They wouldn't.
Right.
Don't do a
Yeah.
lab draw. It will trigger me. But there's all this shame around the scale. And what I think we need to do is not look at the weight. What we need to do is look at what that weight's made up of, and specifically look at how much skeletal muscle do I have? Because what I find with so many people, it's not that they need to lose weight. They need to actually build some muscle. And when they do that, that muscle is the first place we can start to restore that insulin sensitivity. Muscle acts like, I call it, it's two things. It's metabolic Spanx, because it's going to hold everything in tighter, right? And, every woman knows what I mean by that. And the guys are like, huh? What is she talking about? But it holds everything in tighter. And it's one of the ways that we can actually raise our metabolic rate, our basal metabolic rate, right? There's not many ways you can do that. This is one of them. So, but it also is a sponge, so that it will soak up those carbs and store them for later energy as something called glycogen. So your muscles give you a margin for error, right? So if we started to use the scale and we got a bioimpedance scale that told us our weight, our body fat, but more importantly, our lean body mass and our skeletal muscle, and we solely went, all right, what should my skeletal muscle be relative to my ideal body weight? And I'm going to focus on that.
Yeah.
I'm going to really focus on getting that muscle super duper active, because then it's more insulin sensitive. Then I can have better glucose tolerance. Then I start to change everything. And then my body will burn off fat. Then I'll have better metabolism all day long, et cetera. So that's where I think we need to really focus. And, I understand the scale in general, because it's ridiculous to look at total weight and make any kind of assumption.
Right.
I've been, I still remember I'm 6 feet tall. So, like every young girl who's 6 feet tall, I'm like, oh, I should be a model. Never mind that I'm not very photogenic. And I go to the modeling agency, and I was probably 15 at the time. And I weighed 150 pounds, which, by the way, I weigh 150 pounds now. I pretty much have weighed 150 pounds, except when I was pregnant, my entire life. And they told me that I needed to lose 30 pounds.
Wow. That's crazy.
I remember standing at an event next to Christy Brinkley and going, she is so tiny. Her wrists were like so much smaller than my wrists. Like, you look at these, and I'm like, and she had no muscle. She was just thin. Yeah. And I actually used to work with, there was time I was working with muscle models in Miami and South Beach, and I was helping them, be in shape for their shoots, but they didn't want to put any muscle on, because they wanted to stay lightweight, right? Yeah. But I've always been a heavyweight. And so I was like, I tried to lose, I'd lost 10 pounds. I remember my dance teacher was like, are you anorexic? And I'm like, no, I'm just starving. So, but back then we didn't know. I mean, we knew that muscle weighed more, but there was no way to tell, unless you went into a dunk tank. So I think it's a really important thing for us to start to get aware of, and to clinically look at weight differently, not as this shameful thing. It's ridiculous, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's been a big issue in my community when going to the doctor, that what the doctor decides as far as treatments or how to approach a patient has been based simply around the way a patient looks. With PCOS, there is no size or age. It doesn't discriminate. But if patients are overweight, they're basically told, just go lose weight. That's great. That's why I'm here, but I don't know how. And then you have lean women who have PCOS who are told you can't have PCOS because you're too thin. So I wish, that there was more understanding around that.
And here's the other part with that. And I remember when I was on Dr. Phil, we did a teen show, and this gal came on and she was 6'4". Imagine a teenage gal, 6'4". And she was somewhat overweight, but not a lot, maybe 20, 30 pounds overweight. But she was really stuck. And I go, well, let's look at an insulin. And lo and behold, her insulin was 21. No one looked.
Wow.
And I'm like, well, how would she possibly be able to lose fat if she's got an insulin of 21? Those doors are locked.
Yeah.
Shut tight. And so that's the challenge of someone going into a doctor with PCOS, elevated insulin. They go, oh, you need to lose weight. No, duh. I'd love to, but my body's not cooperating because I'm not insulin sensitive. So why don't I fix that problem first? And how do I fix it? I first do the plate so that I've got the satiety that I need so that I'm not hungry, because that ain't going to work. So I got to start establishing that blood sugar balance and that thermic effect of the food. And of course, drinking a lot of water in between meals, because do you know that you drink 16 ounces of water, you boost your metabolism 30% for 40 minutes. So that's a freebie. I say as I got my water, I'm like grabbing the water right now.
I love it. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect segue there.
Right. Use every single thing that you want to use here. And then, find out what that lean mass is, the skeletal mass, start working on building that stuff. And then your body will start to lose fat. But here's the deal. You have to get healthy, metabolically healthy, to lose fat. You don't lose weight to get healthy. We have got it backwards. And that is the problem, there's this predominant idea out there that we lose weight to get healthy. And I know for a fact, having been in this now for 40 years, it's crazy, that is not how it works. And the fact right now that pre-pandemic, the statistics were that 12% and only 12% of the population was metabolically healthy. And so now I heard somewhere, Mark Hyman told me it was like 5% now. So we got to fix that. Then the rest will fix itself. Right? We're going after one symptom of your body not being metabolically healthy and trying to Band-Aid, that won't work. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's interesting when talking about diets, because I often find when we are trying to find a way to incorporate nutrition into our care plans, we can often get caught up in diet culture with the latest fads, or that diet worked for them, so it'll work for me. So I think it's kind of important to discuss why we shouldn't fall into these quick fix fads and why individualizing a nutrition plan is vital to success.
So you need to be your own nutritionist, your own scientist. And what you want to look at is think of diets as tools in your toolbox. There's a paleo diet, there's a keto diet, there's intermittent fasting. There's all sorts of different tactics, whether they're changing timing, whether they're changing how much you're eating, when you're eating, it's what you're eating, right? And these are all tools. Like the way I designed the virgin diet isn't that you're on this for the rest of your life. It's actually taking you through a process to uncover your hidden food intolerances, connect the dots, and figure which foods work for you and which foods don't. And someone will tell me oh, I've been on your diet for years. I'm like, but that's not what it is. It's actually a 3-week process that takes people through this. And then they connect the dots. Same with sugar impact diet. It's meant to help someone retrain their taste bud to appreciate the natural sweetness of a blueberry, as opposed to this artificially sweetened stuff that we've disrupted everything with. Yeah. And to really figure out where they feel best in terms of carbohydrate intake. Right? So these things are set up this way. Now, that means you'll go through and go, because I believe that most of us diet book authors wrote the book for ourselves. What's interesting is I have zero sweet tooth. I've never had a sweet tooth. My adopted mom did. So I was raised on Pop-Tarts, but at age 12, I was like, I don't want any of that stuff. I don't like it. She kept trying to push sugar on me. But I had so many people telling me they couldn't get rid of their sweet tooth. I was like, all right, I'm sure there's a way to hack this one. Let's figure it out. And also, how do we achieve blood sugar balance quickly? So I think that's the way we need to reframe a diet, Is it something that you use short-term and therapeutically to figure out what works for you in that or doesn't? And if it doesn't work, that's great information too. Keto does not work for me. I don't digest fat very well. I take enzymes to do it, but I feel crappy doing that, right? Vegan, feel crappy. Don't do it. So it's really figuring out where do you roll best so you can create your best plan for you. Now, there is something interesting in there about fast weight loss. And, you know, I'm all about, I want to combine science with real world. And the research actually shows, because, you know, it's always been, you should not lose more than 1 pound or 2 a week, blah, blah, blah. Except when I started out on the Virgin diet, I did it because I was using this specific lab test to help people figure out their food sensitivities. And what I would see is the average person was losing 7 pounds in the first week. Now, they didn't lose 7 pounds every week. I had one person very disappointed. I expected to lose 7 pounds a week. I'm like, there will be nothing left of you. So, you know, you would initially have this drop of inflammation, all that extracellular fluid, and some fat. And then you started to lose what you needed to lose, which is what should happen if you're healing your metabolism. Right? It shouldn't just be this ongoing crazy thing. But what the research actually shows is that people who do faster weight loss, when they compared the fast and the slow groups, a year later, the fast were the ones that maintained more of their weight loss. So,
interesting. Okay.
You know, and I will tell you, like, I'm always looking at this stuff going, what makes sense? Like I used to, when I first started out, I used to carry skin fold calipers and a tape measure to people's houses, and I used to not let them weigh. I would only weigh them. They were not allowed to weigh every day. No way, no way. However, the research shows that people who weigh in every day, and when I say this, what I like people to do is go get a DEXA body scan so you can really figure out what your body's made up of and where you need to change things, and then have a inexpensive bioimpedance scale at home so you can then take those results back there and normalize them. Okay. To that scale. But the studies show that people who do step on a scale every single day actually maintain their weight better. So and that's why I get really scared with, I'm not going to step on that because it's shaming. I think that the issue it's the issue is that we're looking at the wrong thing, and we need to move past that because we have a crisis here with our health. And again, if we're looking at metrics to help us become metabolically healthy, and we know that sleep is one, muscle's one, blood sugar's one. We got to measure those because you measure, monitor, you improve. I don't know how to really know what's going on with my blood sugar unless I'm monitoring it. I can't guess. Gee, I think it's 80. I don't know.
Right, you know? Exactly.
Could be, you know, I mean, and you might think, yeah, like you can kind of feel if you had a good night's sleep or not, but it's really nice to know what's impacting it, especially on those nights you don't have a great night's sleep. I remember I woke up one morning and my Oura ring literally said this in the app. And I'm like, this is so wild. It goes, looks like you ate late last night. I'm like, oh, busted. Yes, I did.
It is that I didn't even realize that it could monitor that.
At first I was like, are you spying on me? But you know, these are such important things for us to be able to use. These are great tools. So we got to look at things like scales, like diets. They are tools. Yeah. They are not things you fail at. They're not your mean friend. They are tools to help you continuously improve your metabolic health, focusing on one thing at a time, not trying to change I know it's, beginning of the year. So everyone's like, okay, I'm going to do the meditate and sleep well and exercise. Exactly. No, you're not. Just pick one thing. I decided in 2021, I was going to really focus on my nervous system and stress. It had been one forever that had been an issue. And I went, now's the time. And I gave myself 6 months to really get it to be dialed into my life. And it took 9 months. But I didn't then go, while I'm doing this, I think I'm going to add 12 other things that I can then fail at all of them at once. And so, no, I did one, right? Yeah. You do one by one. And you'll look back over a year and go, wow, look at the changes. You try to do all at once, you'll look back in a month, you go, nothing happened. Yeah,
I think we get caught up in that sometimes because we want so badly to succeed, and we don't realize by piling everything on ourselves that we're more likely to fail than succeed. So that's really important to note for everybody to take on that. So Another part of lifestyle is exercise. Many believe in order for exercise to be effective, you have to be hardcore 24/7. But in some cases, too much exercising may not be a good thing. Can you share your thoughts on how we should view exercise and how too much exercise is not always beneficial to our bodies?
It's like anything else. You have to push and recover, build
Okay.
and restore. And one of the lines I like to say, because I started in my world, I started as an exercise physiologist. That was my first world. And then I realized that I kind of ran out of classes, and doctoral school was number one. And I took a nutrition class. I was like, ooh, and became obsessed with it. But I realized, boy, when you put nutrition and exercise together, it's not 1 + 1 = 2. It's like 1 + 1 = 1,000.
Yeah.
But I started in exercise, and I don't know how to help someone be healthy without exercise. It is, if it was a drug, it would be the most widely prescribed drug. However, just like a drug, it's the dose that makes the difference.
Yeah.
And when we talk about exercise, the challenge is exercise could mean a Pilates class, or it could mean running a marathon. And those have entirely different hormonal effects on you. And just like food is information, so is exercise. So you want to make sure that exercise is achieving the result you're looking for. So when I look specifically in this community, there's a couple really key things that I look at. I have what I call my core 4 exercise program, which is number 1, before you start trying to do all this stuff, just move more.
Yeah.
Move more, and hey, you've got some kind of tracker that can tell you if you're moving more and monitor it and improve it, right? So that's the first one, and I joke, get a dog. Because if you have a dog, you're going to move more.
Oh, yeah.
Now my dogs are 6 pounds, so it's not like we're going on a 10-mile walk. I actually had to get a stroller for them. But, you want to move more. You want to take the stairs, park farther away, stand instead of sit, all of that kind of stuff. So that's just foundational, but that doesn't count as exercise. In order for it to count as exercise, you should get hot and sweaty. It should hurt a bit. But the next thing here is, especially here, is to add resistance training. It is so important. But boy, if you want to hit it hard on resistance training every day, you're going to have a problem, because your body, the whole point of resistance training is to stress, micro tear, do some damage that your body recovers from. So if your body doesn't have recovery time, you don't heal from that. You just get worse, not better. So it's somewhere in the 48 to 72 hours. So I tell people, divide your body into 4 different groups: upper body pushing, upper body pulling, hips and thighs, and power core, and then hit each of those groups 2 to 3 times a week. So you could literally go to the gym or home, because you could do this at home with body weight and a TRX trainer and bands and free weights, and do that whole thing 2 days a week at least. If you want to split it, you could split them and do 4 days, or if you really wanted to build, you could do 3 days, or you could do every other day splitting in 6 days. So you can mess it around however you want schedule to be. But let's say, just for ease of use here, you're going to do a full body workout twice a week, and you could accomplish what you need to really in 30 minutes there.
Yeah.
The next thing you would add is a little bit of cardio. And I actually do a 2-pronged approach to cardio. I have you do some high intensity interval training. I call it bursting to blast fat. It's where you go all out for somewhere in the 20 to 60 second range, and then you recover twice as long, repeat it, recover, repeat it, to accumulate at least 4 minutes of bursts. And that activates the release of a lot of lactic acid, which triggers growth hormone. And it creates a lot of oxygen debt. And what's awesome about the oxygen debt is your body has to then work harder to recover from the oxygen debt. When you just go out for a walk, you didn't create oxygen debt. You're just, we call it controlled falling, right? So it's great, but it's not going to give you the same effect, post-exercise effect, that HIIT training does. So what I like to do is combine the two, where I'll do HIIT training and a little what's called zone 2 training, which is where you can carry on a conversation, but you sound breathy. It's like sexy training, right? So you're like, oh, they're like, what are you doing over there? If you're talking on the phone while you're doing this, like, what are you up to? Nothing. And that's especially great if you can do any kind of a walk or something after you eat. You can lower the blood sugar response to that meal. So if all of a sudden you looked like, and you saw a spike, like when I saw the kiwi spike, I was like, okay, well, we're going to go for a little walk right now and get this thing under control. Now you could do some push-ups, you could do some squats over a chair, you could do something, but you got to do something to get that sugar sucked into the muscles. And that's why muscle's so key. Is muscles, again, that metabolic Spanx, it's going to suck everything in. It's going to help suck the sugar in where it can be stored for energy for future use. So key, mission critical. And then kind of the forgotten part of fitness is this mindful, I call it the core, but I like to think of it more as mindful core, where I would do Pilates or yoga. I love especially hot yoga.
Yeah.
But it requires some focus. Otherwise you're going to fall over, you know.
Yeah. And I don't need any more help with that. So
yeah, I know. My husband and I are the old people in the yoga class. We laugh at this. We go to a very hip yoga class. And thankfully, we'd been doing yoga for a couple of years before we attempted this. First, I went to LA Fitness and did the yoga class where the people in the class were 20 to 30 years older than me. And there were a lot of men. And I thought I was an amazing yogi because they were so not amazing, right? And then I ended up at this class. I'm like, oh boy, am I challenged. But we literally laugh because we'll occasionally just fall over, you know, but you got to work your balance here, because you look at things that are important to in terms of determining metabolic health. On that side, it's grip strength, it's walking gait speed, and balance are those key ones, right?
absolutely. So to tie all of this together, because we're here as part of the 10th anniversary of Heart for PCOS, I want to chat more about how nutrition and exercise can be preventative by helping optimize our health. So my one final question is, how can nutrition play a role in minimizing issues like inflammation and insulin resistance that can ultimately lead to risk factors for cardiovascular disease like high cholesterol, abdominal-centered weight, and high blood pressure?
You know, it's interesting because when I think, first of all, prevention's the most impossible thing to get anyone to do, as we know. Like, it's nearly impossible. But when you really look at a lot of these things, and especially if you put diet and exercise together, just a lot of the stuff doesn't happen if you are actively doing these things. But for most of us, I mean, especially when you go back to the statistics of metabolic health, most people either have something going on. Their insulin's up, their triglycerides are up, something. And what's super cool is you can see the impact diet has on that fairly quickly. Like, you can start to heal and transform your body so quickly by just, number one, making an oil change. One of the key places we're getting a lot of inflammation is sugar. Like, sugar is super inflammatory. And I find sugar sneaking into the silliest places people would never suspect. They go get that green drink thinking they're doing something great. And the green drink's really all fruit juice, and it's got more sugar than a Coke. They get those diet salad dressings that say light, but they're loaded with sugar, right? And damaged oils. So the thing that when you start to really be aware of where sugar's sneaking in and lower that, that's a quick way to lower that inflammation. Figuring out your hidden food intolerances, virgin diet, is another way to do it. Because if you're inflamed, you know, one thing people don't realize is you've got the inflammation insulin cycle, which, you know, you're more insulin resistant, you're more inflamed, and then you're going to have inflammation's an independent risk factor for obesity. Then the cycle just goes around and around and around. It's craziness. But you can quickly start to shift that inflammation. Now, some of the stored fat in the fat cells can take longer to do, but you start to change those things, reduce the inflammation quickly, especially by getting out the sugar and the hidden food intolerances. Holy smokes, wow, you'll start to see changes very quickly, but you'll feel them too. You'll see triglycerides drop, HDL come up, like amazing stuff. And by the way, just doing things like adding in lemon juice and vinegar can start to have a dramatic impact. So, like, if you're wearing a CGM, you can start to really see how that can impact things as well. So I always like to start with changing what's at the end of your fork, because I find that that is such a fast way to make a shift that will help you feel better too. Because if you're making that shift with medication always, it doesn't come with side benefits. Like changing your diet doesn't come with side effects. So maybe it lowered the thing it was trying to lower, but probably added other problems, you know, along the way. So now you feel crappy, but this thing's lower, but now it's causing other issues. So I always like to see how far could we go quickly with food, especially if we're really throwing the medicinal food chest at it. We are doing those all those different rainbow colors to help the polyphenols. We're doing the apple cider vinegars and lemon juice and cinnamon and ginger and curcumin, things we know can help with insulin sensitivity, and we're eating by the plate. Like, it's crazy how quickly. And then you can add exercise on that, and man, I mean, you could see a massive shift in under a month.
I absolutely love it. So much amazing information that you've shared with us today. Thank you so much for that. And I want people to know how they can reach out to you to learn more and to be part of the JJ Virgin Diet and find out more about your products. So can you share where you can find it on social media, your websites, and how people can sign up to work with you?
Sure. So I have a tool on my website. It's a roadmap that helps people kind of go, where should I start? And that's at jjvirgin.com/roadmap. And you'll be able to get that download. And it really says, start here, focus on this first, and then go to here, and then go to here, right? And it just kind of paces it through so you are overwhelmed and you have little wins all along the way. And then the website has podcasts and social and all that kind of stuff. I'm very active with my podcast, Instagram and YouTube. Those are where I tend to hang.
Awesome. Well, I will make sure that everybody has all of these links and social media platforms so they can reach out and learn more. JJ, thank you for sharing your time and your expertise today to make a difference in the lives of patients with PCOS, the providers who treat them, and the people who support them. Everyone, thank you for tuning in today. Be sure to follow us throughout the month of February for more interviews, events, and ways to get involved to keep the hearts of the PCOS community beating strong. See you soon.